For this episode, we are talking with Courtney Penley from PETA, the organization formerly known as the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. We recently had a segment where we discussed a horse that died on the set of Amazon Prime's The Rings of Power, and PETA reached out to us to ask if they could come on the podcast to have a real discussion on animals and entertainment and their organization, and we said, all right, let's give it a whirl. So, Courtney, welcome aboard.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Are you terrified? I'm just kidding.
I am. I'm totally terrified.
Well, Aaron's a sweetheart. I'm just me.
You're both incredibly intimidating.
We'll have some tough questions, but I think they're all fair. They're all fair in their stuff I'm sure you've dealt with before. So in regard, I guess we should start with that specific incident, right? The horse on the series of The Rings of Power. How does PETA see that situation?
With that situation, the way that we see it is we were in touch with Amazon long before the show ever went into production to ensure that they knew exactly how vulnerable horses are and how best to navigate their use for the show. And we said, do not let this show be a repeat of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, where 27 animals, including 2 horses, lost their lives. We're here to help. But they were unresponsive, and now a horse is dead.
Well, that just cuts right to the chase then.
Yeah, I'm totally avoidable incident.
Okay, so give us some input, some landscape, if you will. Fill in the gaps. What is PETA's position on using live animals on movie sets for entertainment purposes, and what are the thoughts on movies that use CGI or other special effects to replace or supplement live animals?
Yeah, so when it comes to the use of animals on film and TV sets, we would absolutely love to see no animals at all used in film and TV. But we urge productions to do a little bit of research before they're going to go into production. If they're planning on depicting animals, that might mean reaching out to PETA or just having a meeting with us so we can talk about pre-production training methods that animals often endure, their living conditions, what to expect on set and thereafter. But so we really just want to see no animals used in film at all, if at all avoidable. And sorry.
No, how receptive are the studios to that?
Well, as far as the studios, we do have some really great relationships with some people at the studios, and they're super receptive to that. But we do a lot of our outreach to the filmmakers and showrunners themselves, and we get great reception. We've worked with several people to talk about what they're planning on depicting in their show, how we can be of help, and the most humane ways to move forward with those projects. And we just get really great reception overall.
Okay, so let's dig into the actual process of what PETA does when it comes to working with animals, especially on movie sets. How does PETA ensure that the animals are used in movies and cared for appropriately?
Yeah, so the work that PETA's Animals in Film and TV Division, or AFTV for short, does is we act as a resource for filmmakers so that we can explain to them why animals don't belong on TV and film sets in the first place, what happens to them before, during, and after filming, the long history of abuses and deaths that have historically happened to animals used in entertainment, and anything else that they might need. Maybe that means looking at a script for messaging or just talking out their plans for use of animals. We have so much research that we've done on the animal training industry and on the film industry. So we just want to act as a resource for filmmakers. And maybe that means they come to us and they say, hey, we're planning to use animals and there's nothing you can do to stop us. What do you think about these animal trainers that we're considering working with? How do we vet these animal trainers to make sure that, they're good guys and that we're doing the best that we can possibly do on set to ensure the animal safety?
I mean, because to be fair, it is a lot more expensive to use CGI instead of an animal, right? What would you guys prefer from a PETA standpoint, that they write entertainment around so animals aren't involved in scenes? Is that kind of where do you believe that using physical animal actors on movie sets causes undue stress and harm to the animals involved?
Absolutely. Using animals I wouldn't call them animal actors because they're not consenting to be in those projects, but using animals at all does cause undue stress because film sets are really stressful, unpredictable environments. You never know what's going to happen. But I would say that, when you say that CGI is more expensive than using animals, I would argue that it's not because in this case, an animal died, and that's the ultimate price, right? So when looking at trying to replace an animal, if somebody can't afford to use animal, for instance, I would just say, does this hypothetical low budget filmmaker know someone with horse companions at a ranch that they can go film at? Can they go there? I would invite any low budget filmmakers or people that are concerned about budget to reach out to us, and we can meet and talk about their plans and help them move forward in the safest and most humane way possible.
What's the difference between bringing a horse to the set from an animal trainer and going to a ranch with a horse companion, so to speak?
Well, there's no one size fits all approach really, other than completely omitting animals from productions altogether. But the process of transporting animals to and from a set is extremely stressful and can be dangerous. And so if we can remove that element, then that's really helpful. Also, going to a ranch, you are often looking at horses that are companions to somebody that owns that ranch, right? Versus hiring an animal trainer whose entire job it is to look at the animals as a commodity to be used in film and television.
I gotcha. And based on what you know now, what measures are taken and what training requirements are implemented to ensure that animals are not subjected to physical or emotional abuse on movie sets? Like, what do the studios do now?
There's actually not any real animal welfare laws that they're required to uphold, and so that's why we're here, because we want to hold them accountable whenever something bad does happen. So with the instance of the horse, for instance, this is not an isolated incident. It's actually, we're seeing a pattern here. A horse died on set of HBO's The Gilded Age last year, and that production, as far as we know, wouldn't have even come forward to let people know publicly that a horse had died. We only learned about it because we received several whistleblower reports. And so it's really important that there be compassionate people on film sets who are acting on behalf of the animals to ensure their welfare, because of the fact that, there's really just not any regulations that they are required to uphold.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but on Rings of Power, didn't they have of people on site to supervise the animals?
My understanding is that of course they had the suppliers, and then they had a veterinarian and American Humane, but American Humane's oversight is clearly ineffective. Even when they are on set, animals have still been put in dangerous situations, injured or worse, as is demonstrated here once again. Additionally, as far as I know, American Humane doesn't monitor offset living conditions, pre-production training, or what happens to animals when they're too old, sick, or no longer profitable to be used in film and TV. So, many of the animals that we see on TV are discarded like trash when trainers are done with them. They're sitting alone in cages at roadside zoos, they're withering away at shelters, or even abandoned on the side of the road. So PETA's looking at the whole picture, including what happens before and after filming, not just what's happening on set.
Okay, how do you respond to that, to the accusations that using animal actors, or let's just say animals, because I agree with you about the actors term. Sorry, made all these questions up, and then and now I'm going to just not only Ron Burgundy all of this, but I'm going to start talking over myself, and this is what ADD is like. Okay. I'm going to try all over again. How do you respond to accusations of using animals on movie sets being cruel and exploitive?
Well, are you saying that PETA's the one making those accusations?
No, how do other people that feel that way?
Yeah, other people that feel that way.
Yeah, I would say that there is some truth to that, right? So even the most well-intending animal trainers cannot guarantee the safety of an animal on a set. It's just too unpredictable. However, there are a lot of bad actors out there. PETA's investigations into one notorious animal supplier found that dogs were kept in barren, pound-like kennels with concrete floors and no bedding, even as temperatures dropped into the low 40s. 2 cats were virtually starved because the trainer said they were fat, and animals were deprived of adequate veterinary care, including a pig with a skin condition. Yet these animal trainers are still working regularly on Hollywood productions. And so it's up to productions to do their due diligence, right? They can Google these productions and they can find these investigations with video evidence of the abuses that are being alleged against them, or they can just talk to PETA, because we've done a lot of research and we can help them to navigate the use of or the depiction of animals in the most humane way possible. But really, the most humane thing that they can possibly do is just completely omit the use of real animals.
Okay, I have a bit of a hot take question for you, and this is sorry, Aaron, this is not on the list of things we were going to discuss. So, we in Hollywood, we recently gone through a period in which the Me Too movement made a lot of huge changes in the production of movies and how Hollywood views actors and the treatment of their co-stars and everything down the line. It started to create a huge list of changes that should have probably hit Hollywood decades ago. Do you think there's going to be some sort of catalyst moment like that for the animal industry? And what do you think it's going to take for us to get there?
I don't know if there's going to be some type of catalyst for the animal industry, though. We've definitely seen a lot of progress already, right? So used to, you would see chimpanzees in Hollywood regularly, but thanks in large part to the work that PETA's done, you no longer see chimpanzees in movies. You see a lot of really excellent CGI instead. And we do think that the future of film, of Hollywood, of film and television, is going to be an animal-free future. However, there's a transitionary process that we're going through, just like with every other social justice movement. And so we understand that we're, in a process of trying to slowly get those animals out. And again, I'm not sure if there's going to be one big catalyst, but I would say, most likely we're going to see wild animals out of film and television first. Wild animals are just that, they're wild, and their needs can absolutely never be met on a film set. So it's never okay to use them, to force them into servitude, and to exploit them for entertainment. And I do see so many people connecting with the use of wild animals and understanding why that's wrong. And so I think that that's probably going to be the first thing that we see go.
Well, and on the subject of using wild animals and also people connecting with wild animals, can we take a different view of that, where for a lot of people, the only time in their life they get the opportunity to connect with a wild animal is through movies or television, and the chance or the inspiration to decide they want to go into an industry that either protects, guides, or teaches all about wild animals is through movies and television. That spark is usually where that comes from. Crap. It was so good. Aaron, can you bail me out?
Isn't there an advantage to people seeing animals that are treated humanely on the screen?
See, Aaron speaks me very well, so.
Great job, Aaron. There's absolutely a great benefit to seeing a depiction of an animal treated humanely on TV, right? Which is why we're all about CGI, animatronics, puppetry, whatever it might be. Any kind of humane technology being used to depict those animals is awesome. We're all for it, right? Because we want people to see those animals. However, anytime that you see a real wild animal used in a film or TV show, whether or not they look happy to you and they look like they're being treated well, you need to know that that animal was abused. Take primates, for instance. They are curious. They're highly social animals with complex physical and psychological needs that cannot be met on sound stages or at training compounds. And people often confuse a primate's fear grimace with a smile, when in fact, if you see a smiling monkey on your film or TV show that you're watching, then you should know that they're most likely terrified.
And somebody's about to get hurt.
Yeah, actually, I mean, they're absolutely dangerous to have. So it's not only a question of, it's an ethical issue with forcing them into servitude and bringing them to a set and, causing undue stress to that animal, but they are actually dangerous and they're going to lash out because of the fact that they're stressed and they might hurt somebody.
And so when you come to movies like Cocaine Bear, right? I believe PETA was actually okay with Cocaine Bear, right? Because it was all CGI in terms of the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cocaine Bear is a project that we were in touch with long before it ever came out. We were assured that they were going to use CGI. And then I have to say, I personally saw the trailer and I was like, did they actually use CGI? This is unreal. It looked so good. But I think maybe the point you were getting at is sometimes you see animals treated badly or questionably in film and television. And we understand that that's a reality that does happen. Cocaine Bear is based on a true story where a bear actually ingested cocaine. I know people were really shocked whenever we awarded the boys a Tech Not Terror Award last year because of the depiction of the Chase Crawford character eating his really good friend Timothy the octopus. People were like, what? Like, why is PETA condoning this? That's crazy. He's eating an animal. It's a really disturbing scene. But, those are really thought-provoking moments that make people think, oh my gosh, an octopus is super smart and we should probably not be eating them. That's disgusting. But additionally, they used CGI and puppetry, I believe, for that. And it was really cool.
And hopefully gummy worms, because it was gross. So, so you're as PETA, the organization, you're more concerned thematically, less concerned thematically with what the uses are than you are just don't use animals. Like if you have a story to tell, it's not so much about the story, it's don't use animals to tell that story. Do you worry about negative impacts from people seeing it? Like people might be terrified of bears, not that they shouldn't be. I'm an avid backpacker. They should be. But along those lines, is that a concern?
I would say number one, we absolutely do not want to see real animals used on a film set, period. Do not use real animals. If there's a way around it, if you can use CGI or puppets, or you can omit it or use stock footage, do that 100%. But we're also concerned with themes, and we regularly work with filmmakers to read their scripts and to check for animal messaging or vegan messaging or whatever it might be. The messaging is super important. I can give you an example. Like in the past, a lot of programs like movies and shows have resulted in people rushing out to buy purebred animals from seedy from breeders, right? And so that's a really huge problem. And so, for instance, if you're going to have dogs in your show, then we would like to know that they are, mixed breed versus purebred, so that they're not, causing people to rush out and buy a bunch of purebred dogs. And we want to see adoption messaging anytime that there's an option to include it. And so we definitely care about themes, but sometimes when bad things happen to animals in film and TV, the takeaway from that can be, a really positive one for the animals.
Let's talk about depiction. So how do you feel about films that depict animal abuse or violence? I mean, is it okay? It's not okay that a puppy was killed in John Wick, but that he killed everyone that had anything to do with it. Is that okay? I don't know what the rules
are. It's really just a case-by-case basis. Nobody wants to see animal abuse happen on screen, but the fact of the matter is that people really are abusing animals in real life. And so, for instance, if you've got a serial killer and you're doing a show about them and they got their start abusing animals, then it's important that people see that, but it's also more important that no real animals are used in the depiction of it. So we shouldn't be using any real animals to depict those scenes, whether or not they're included. But, those things really do matter. Audiences are highly influenced by what they see on film and TV. And so it's up to filmmakers to be responsible with that messaging.
Okay, so this kind of goes along the same lines of what we're talking about right now and fits in to a degree. What type of animal rights issues do you think are often portrayed correctly or incorrectly in movies and television?
Something I really love to see in film and TV is animal rights activists that break into a lab and free animals. That's awesome, because we should not be testing on animals. That's totally messed up, right? But often TV shows will use real animals in that lab setting, and it's like, why did you have to do that? There should not be any real animals in cages whenever you have a character that's breaking in to liberate said animals. So, that would be a scenario in which I'd say, great messaging. That's awesome. Why did you use a real animal? You could have absolutely just used a prop.
Testing is always a tricky one for me, because I understand the medical need to some degree, but I also feel like it is cruel. It is cruel. So it's difficult to kind of wrestle with it in some ways.
Yeah,
you know
that's a whole different podcast, and we've got experts on that. But
Absolutely.
I would say check out our website, because there is a lot of animal testing that's done completely needlessly under the guise that it's needed. And so if you just check out PETA.org, we have a lot of information on that. But you would be really surprised at how much unnecessary, I mean, all of it being unnecessary,
Sure.
how much of it is not actually validated in any way. And it's really just all about keeping that funding coming in.
So what role do you think movie studios and production companies have in advocating for animal rights?
Yeah, I think that it's really important for movie studios and networks to just do their research, right? Like I said earlier, there are so many animal trainers that that we know have broken animal welfare regulations and are keeping animals in bad situations. For instance, with one supplier, law enforcement raided their facility. They've got video footage where they found more than a dozen dogs kept in cramped kennels, stacked on one on top of another in a garage, animals crammed in closets, an alligator in a filthy outdoor pit. And as long as there is demand for animals in film, this horrendous treatment of animals is going to continue, which is why we urge studios, productions, networks, whoever those decision makers are, to omit animals from storylines, use humane tech, use cast or crew companion animals whenever possible. And if they feel the absolute need to include real animals in their production, then they need to be doing some research, right? So just go online, do a little bit of basic research, and you'll see that some of these people that are being hired for productions are bad actors. Reach out to PETA. We've done all of that research for them, and we can chat with them about the issues.
Okay. As the Floridian in here, I can tell you that the alligator probably deserved it.
Stop.
No.
Stop.
I'm kidding, but not really. Those things terrify me.
Yeah,
Okay,
they are terrifying, which is why we should leave them out in the wild and we shouldn't mess with them.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
We should not be keeping them in servitude and forcing them onto film sets.
It shouldn't be in my backyard at the moment, but it's there too.
Okay, we have a few tougher questions. So are you ready?
Oh, no.
Okay. I think you'll be fine. It's probably nothing that you haven't heard before, but how do you respond to criticisms that organizations like PETA are overly reactive or extreme in their views toward animal welfare in movies and in general? And I will give you like a personal example. Amanda, our other host on the podcast, she couldn't be here due to traveling, but she is a social activist. She sits on the Colorado board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. She's chaired many fundraisers for various causes because she loves people and animals equally. She's really, like, her heart's always out there. And she did a fundraiser for endangered animals at Buffalo Wild Wings, which was just chosen because of location and availability. And there were representatives of PETA, of the local chapter. They spent the entire event shouting and provoking the attendees. And that's a real event that happened. And I know there are other accounts of similar events. So how do you respond to those kinds of criticisms?
Yeah, without knowing that PETA was there, I initially hear that and I'm like, why are people that defend wildlife eating at a chicken establishment? What I think is more extreme than PETA holding signs and chanting is the fact that, so many animals, so many chickens are forced into factory farms where they don't have any kind of space or autonomy. They don't ever get to breathe fresh air or touch grass. And then they're slaughtered for their meat and we're eating them. I mean, that's extreme in my view. But I would say, in the, you said that PETA is highly reactive. So much of the work that we do is proactive. Most of the work that we do is in the private. We do research. I know in my division in particular that we're writing productions, we're meeting with filmmakers, and we rarely ever go to press. We rarely ever do that. However, that being said, media and public demonstrations are incredibly useful tools for getting important messages out to the public. And if we feel that that's the best method for shining a light on injustices that animals are enduring, then that's what we're going to do. And it's unfortunate that, her organization was there defending the rights of some animals, but I would say, PETA was there defending the rights of all animals, including the animals that are being used for food at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Okay. What steps does PETA take to ensure the well-being and welfare of the animals that are in their care, as there have been some reported incidents of mistreatment at PETA facilities?
Oh, could you give me an example of the incident?
I believe there's in particular, there was a Virginia facility that was euthanizing dogs or animals that were unhealthy or actually healthy in the situation. This is off of my memory.
They had no home. They had no home.
Yeah.
No adoptable home.
No adoptable home. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't speak necessarily to that case in particular because I'm not quite sure which one you're referring to. But I would say, in regards to PETA's shelter, just as a hospice has a high mortality rate, so does a shelter that takes in near end of life, feral, aggressive, dying, and discarded animals. PETA takes in all animals without any discrimination, without admission fees, appointments, waiting lists, or obstacles. And so I can guarantee you that every single animal that is in the care of a PETA facility is treated with love, even those that are euthanized. They are held by somebody that's really loving and caring and supportive in their last moments. And so, I'm not quite sure exactly what the scenario you're talking about is, but yeah, I would just argue that, we have a high mortality rate because of that really hard work that we do to support the community in Virginia.
Okay, well, let me spin it to this, because this is something that I can speak to. So there are some things I agree completely with PETA on, like completely. I'm very big on an advocacy for all animals. And others, I would argue, just like any large organization, there's a bit of hypocrisy on it, and just hear me out. So, for instance, my kids were never taken to a zoo by me. I refused. I would never take them because I just think it's cruel to go and watch animals in cages that we basically just plucked out of existence from their homes for our entertainment, right? Mm-hmm. I can't support those endeavors. I never can. On the flip side, I do not condone euthanasia of healthy animals that pose no immediate threat simply because they don't have an adoptable home. I believe those animals should be set free. They can fend for themselves, take their chance in the world as we all do. What is PETA's policy of euthanasia on animals in their care, and how is that decision made? And do you understand where I'm coming from? I mean, to me, that's a hypocrisy that we would euthanize animals that are healthy, that just don't have an adoptable home.
I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I think what you're saying is you're an advocate for the no-kill movement. And so, animals are individuals, each with their own needs and often heartbreaking stories, but the no-kill movement has reduced them to numbers at a grave cost to their welfare and their safety. They are able to call themselves no-kill by turning away animals that are in need, refusing to provide euthanasia service to those that can't afford to have their animals euthanized at veterinary pricey clinics, charging unreasonable admission fees, forcing people to sit on waiting lists for months, and even giving animals away for free without screening prospective adopters to make sure that they are going to take really good care of those animals. There are terrible policies that are in place that cause enormous suffering. When you say leave the animals to the street and let them fend for themselves because they're healthy, it makes me think immediately of cats and how short their lifespan is when they're outdoors, how extremely hard that they have it. They're prone to being attacked by other animals or by people. And when you have a cat outdoors, that cat is, directly affecting the wild bird population. So it's the issue is that we have an overpopulation crisis, and it's not one that we can adopt our way out of. And the only solution sometimes is to provide euthanasia services. But really what we need to be doing in the first place is making sure that all of our animals are spayed and neutered, and that people are not allowed to go to stores to buy animals from breeders.
But wouldn't it, and I'm just being completely honest, isn't that a bit hypocritical when, there are caretakers that are taking care of animals? Let's say, I'm sure there are wonderful caretakers of animals on Hollywood sets and other places that are giving them a home, they're feeding them and everything else. Isn't that better than putting animals down? I know it's a tricky question.
I think that those are two completely unrelated issues, right? But I would say in regard to those good actors, those really well-intended animal trainers that are taking in animals and using them for productions, again, it's a case-by-case basis. So we really want to encourage productions to vet their trainers. They can visit their location to see firsthand where those animals live and to ask about pre-production training methods. Do they live in a home with their trainer? Do they sleep in a crate or a cage? If they're in a cold garage with no love, no companionship, then I don't know that is better than them being euthanized at a clinic. As long as that trainer is treating them like a member of the family, they're using positive reinforcement, that's great. But even with that being said, and that animal having a home to go home to at night where they are cared for, film sets are unpredictable, and even the most well-intending person cannot, guarantee the safety of an animal on set because they're really highly unpredictable. I mean, if you've ever walked a dog and they've spotted a squirrel, then the animals are unpredictable and we can't always foresee what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, I am not part of the no-kill movement. I say just let them be free, that's just where I am. I'm not part of any movement.
Yeah,
way too much work.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of domestic animals really do rely on humans to take care of them. And so it's hard to set them free and let them fend for themselves, especially when people are driving cars and there are other animals out there fending for themselves.
Yeah, a stray cat's like equal to a tiny ecological disaster for certain areas. As far as what once you put a stray cat out there, it's a problem for almost every single creature that's smaller than it in the area.
That's why I'm a dog person.
Yeah, and I can tell I am a volunteer for PETA's 24-hour animal emergency hotline. So I've seen firsthand some of the horrors that these animals that are left to fend for themselves on the street are encountering. And I would challenge you just to volunteer for that for a weekend, and then you might change your mind about leaving them out there to fend for themselves.
I might do that. I think it's important to challenge my views for sure.
No, yeah, it's the thing about animal handling and or rearing, depending on how you want to call it and talk about it. This is not me asking a question. This is me mentioning something that I know of. So I've always been a big proponent or had a huge interest in falconry, and the reason why is because of a movie. Lady Hawk got me interested in falconry as a kid, and I've done nothing but research it and understand it and appreciate the art of what those people are doing. And to the degree of understanding that currently we have peregrine falcons out in the wild, and it's almost wholeheartedly because falconers got involved in the preservation of the animals. And then because of the practices within falconry, you've got in training birds of prey, and the way these falconers typically do things, they do treat them as family, but they also have an understanding that birds of prey is more of a partnership, and their only way to get them to do anything is through positive reinforcement. But the condor is alive and well in the United States because of falconers. Eagles are alive and well because of falconers. Peregrine falcons are because of falconers. Now, if you look at it falconry from the outside, where you have a guy who walks in the woods with a cast with him, and that cast is consisted of red-shouldered hawks or whatever kind of hawk, red tails, it looks like you could turn around and say that that person's not treating the animal properly, especially if some accident happens. I don't know where I'm going yet. I'll figure it out. Some accident happens and the bird gets hit by a car because it's too close to a road or something. But from the outside, somebody can take a look at that that whole view of on falconers and say, well, that's a problem to the birds because there's an accident that happens. But birds of prey in the wild do not live to be 20, 30 years old, but falconers and bird centers have gotten those birds to be able to get to a point where they can live 20, 30 years old. It's just interesting. It's more of an interest thing that or a difference, I think, in some ways some animals are treated versus others. Okay, that's me. I'm done.
Okay.
Aaron has a lot to work with when it comes to me because I don't. He doesn't ever know where I'm going with.
It's not anything. About you, John. It's not about you.
All right.
So you go ahead. It's your turn.
It was very interesting, though. Very interesting tidbit that you have there, and it sounds like you know a lot more about falconry than I do. So I can't really speak to that, but I would say, as far as conservation efforts go, I would just want to know that those that are involved in it are accredited, and that the animals are receiving the best possible care, that they're in their facilities that they can. But I can't really speak to that. But it sounds like you know a lot about falconry. That's very
well. Yeah, and really, it's the thing. It was falconry is kind of my doorway into some of the conservation efforts that I take as a person. Nice. So I'm what I like to call a flexitarian. So as a flexitarian, what that means is that I eat primarily vegetarian or vegan to a degree, but there are times where I will allow a meat meal creep in, maybe once or twice a week. But and the reason why it's called flexitarian is because I do it partially because of my health, but also because of what my research into factory farms has led me to understand. And I feel like as long as I don't participate as much as I would used to in the buying meat or eating meat, I'm doing my part in reducing the impact those places have. I wish more people would consider that, because I do talk to a lot of people who are like, no, you got to eat meat with every meal. And it's like, no, you really don't. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for, for what you do, and for the vegan meals that you do eat and for making that your primary diet. That's really great. I just wanted to add too, that with the falconry, they still shouldn't be on film and TV sets.
No, they still. I agree that they shouldn't. I agree, but there's part of me that's like, I wouldn't be where I am right now or have the views that I have right now if it wasn't for it being on a movie. But I agree to an extent. My problem is when it comes to animals on, CGI versus reality. I have I have an art background, and because of my art background, I notice things about movement and musculature and I know too much about how the sausage is made when CGI happens that it takes a lot to convince me that CGI is not CGI. So you mentioned that in Cocaine Bear that you were convinced that bear was real. I wasn't because of my problem, because I have a high uncanny valley issue.
Well, I wasn't, because I've seen actual bears and they just don't move like that.
I think there's a couple of things to be said here, right? So if you have a filmmaking background, you know that you will never, ever look at a movie the same way again.
Right.
You go into it, you're watching it different. I know, I went to film school and I've worked a little bit in on productions and in film and television. So I look at television and movies a lot different. However, we are supposed to go in with a suspension of disbelief. Okay. Mm-hmm. You want me to believe that I'm in the 1800s and you think that the lack of a horse or a CGI horse is going to be the thing that bumps me, then, that's just not the case, right? Creators are intelligent and they're creative enough to find ways to do this without putting animals at risk. And if it can't be done with CGI, they can do like Alice. I don't know if you saw Alice last year, but during part of that film, we're made to believe that we're in the antebellum South for like the whole first half of that film. Yet they didn't use a single horse. And I challenge most people that went to see that to recall the fact that they didn't see a horse.
Wouldn't there be something to be said, though, for the impact that films with animals have on people. I mean, I can be perfectly honest. I would have never wanted a dog if it wasn't for movies. If I never saw Benji, I swear to God, this is a true story. If I never saw Oh Heavenly Dog, I never ever would want a dog. I didn't really have any friends that had a dog or anything. And I know that there's a negative to that too, because then you get people that run out and want to adopt a dog and they can't take care of it and they take it back. So there are awful people. Absolutely. But you see what I'm saying? Like, there is a positive impact to some degree.
Totally. There's a lot of positive impact to seeing a depiction of an animal on screen. And that's why I say, if it can be done using humane technology like CGI, animatronics, whatever that might be, that's awesome. In the case of domestic animals like cats and dogs, they often, live in really cruddy scenarios, that are inherently cruel training methods. They, are kept in bearing kennels. And so if somebody's going to use a dog or a cat on a film or TV set, there are humane ways around that. They can do like Bradley Cooper did in A Star is Born, or Tilda Swinton in The Eternal Daughter. We just learned that Patricia Clarkson for Monica brought her own companion animal to set. So as long as that dog that you're seeing on screen is not, languishing away at a prison-like facility and, enduring abusive training methods, but instead, has somebody to go home with at nighttime and lay their head down on a pillow and is living with a loving family, there's no problem with that.
Okay.
All right. I'm in.
Yeah. Great.
You, John.
I'm working on that. Hold on. Stop pushing me. Okay. You know what? Can we let's go. Aaron and I came in with this whole grilling portion of it. Now it's time.
Not really grilling. Those are honest questions.
Yeah, be nice and cut out anything where I don't sound informed. I'm just kidding.
Trust me, John will be gone mostly. So
right.
Just kidding.
Yeah, he will be cutting a lot of me out. So can you share with us any sort of notable accomplishments in the field of animal rescue and welfare by PETA?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's so many. One thing that really stands out to me, I'm not an expert in this. You'd have to talk to somebody else at our organization that really did the work, but there used to be chimpanzees used in Hollywood, which we discussed earlier, but now, thanks in large part to the work that PETA's done, there are no more chimpanzees in Hollywood. And we are, ecstatic about that. We're seeing awesome, humane technology recreations of these animals like Gordy in Nope recently. But there was this one chimpanzee, Tonka, who was forced to perform for film and TV for years. And PETA was like, great, now that, Tonka's out, we really want to move him to a sanctuary and give him a really great life. And we're going to help to coordinate that. But the handler that had Tonka went to great lengths to basically keep Tonka, hidden away in a basement from people. They went so far as to have their husband lie under oath at a court saying that he euthanized this animal and that cremated the animal and that they were no longer alive. But we just didn't believe it. PETA, was really hitting hard with the press. We had rewards out there, and it came to light that Tonka was still actually alive. And we coordinated moving Tonka from that prison-like basement cell that they were in to a sanctuary, which is really exciting.
That is really exciting. That is awesome.
And also kind of messed up. It's pretty messed up.
Yeah, it's incredibly messed up. I mean, the victories that PETA sees with animal rescue and liberation are, there's just so many of them. One that's happening right now that I'm really excited about, I don't know if you've been following, you probably have, John, because you're in Florida, is Lolita, who's been, wasting away in a tiny tank at this aquarium in Miami for the past 50 years, is finally on her way home. And so we're just so excited to, be a part of that and to be witnessing this journey as, all of the work is being done to move Lolita to a seaside sanctuary.
That's awesome. Aaron, Lolita is a killer whale.
Yep, I know who it is.
Okay, just thought I thought she was a Florida celebrity. So
No,
you wouldn't have known.
I know quite a bit about captured animals like zoos and aquariums and things like that, because I'm just not a fan. But so I try to keep up with that as much as I can. And I know some people, oh, that's great to see that dolphin flip over. I'm like, that. Have you seen? I've actually done like the swimming with the dolphins. My wife made me do it, and I thought it was like open ocean, and it was not when I got there. It was based on the brochures and stuff. And I'm like, if it's open ocean, maybe I can deal with this. But it wasn't, and I was not. It was a hard thing to see and to witness, and I just realized like this is just to entertain us. That's not cool, you know. But that's a whole other thing. How do you respond? Because I know this happens. I know it happens to your organization a lot, right? There's a lot of people that look at PETA and they say, well, you're extremists. And I know you guys don't feel that way. So what do you say to people that have that stance?
Yeah, again, I would say the most extreme thing that I see is forcing animals into these horrendous situations, forcing animals onto factory farms and then, hanging them up by their feet and slitting their throats while they're still conscious and then eating them, or ripping away, their children so that you can get milk out of a dairy cow, for instance. I think that's pretty extreme. I think, this pipeline of primates that are being kidnapped from the jungle and then forced into laboratories to be tested on is pretty darn extreme. And the same with taking wild animals away from their natural environments and using abusive training methods to make them act in a film or a TV show. That's pretty extreme. Most of the work that I do in my division, and most of the work that I believe most of the people at PETA doing, is behind the scenes. We're working really, really hard to change legislation, to reach out to different organizations that are using animals in some way that is cruel or abusive, to advocate on behalf of those animals. And that's not very extreme. It's a behind the scenes, and sometimes we do get media coverage and sometimes we have demonstrations and you might see it as extreme, but how else are you going to know about those issues, right? Why are we here talking about this today? We're here talking about this today because you saw our response to a horse dying on set.
Yep, that's true.
Of a TV show. And you might not ever know about some of these training, pre-production training methods that they use, for instance, if we weren't talking today and if we hadn't gone to press.
That's a fair point.
That's a fair point. And I've so far this conversation, well, actually not so far. This conversation has been great. I've learned a lot from it. I've really appreciated your time for sure. One
final question. What steps can individuals take to support animal welfare in the film industry?
Individuals. So if you are, whether you're a filmmaker or whether you're an audience member, we're urging everyone to recognize that animals don't belong on set. Then filmmakers should stop using them in their productions. There are alternatives, and we invite filmmakers, writers, and anyone in the industry to use PETA as a resource for information and alternatives to using real animals. We also want anybody that's on a film set that's compassionate and sees something questionable happening with an animal, if they see a wild animal, to call us. We take whistleblowers' anonymity very seriously, so they can call us at 323-210-2233 to report any kind of abusive scenarios that they see, or anything just strange, any kind of animals on set that they're concerned about. And as far as the viewing public, audiences can not watch shows that use real animals, especially wild animals. Just don't watch it, and if you're not going to watch it, make sure that you let the producers know why you're not watching it. Go to the network or the filmmaker's website and say, hey, I'm not going to watch this because I saw that you have a real wild animal in it. Or they can even contact us again at 323-210-2233. They can go to PETA.org/report and they can let us know what they're seeing that's questionable, and then we'll check into it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for doing this, Courtney. I really, really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun chatting with you guys.
And thank you for taking the harder questions.